Hello, something guys and gals. This is Something Guy 912. Making a career on YouTube is simultaneously illustrious and anxious in measure that for many creators will dictate the way they will inevitably go about making their content. One moment you could be completely on good terms with YouTube, the next you'll be neck deep in copyright strikes with the risk of having your entire livelihood fall before you, vis-a-vis the act man who found himself at that very crossroads for something he did on a completely different platform of all things. But I'm not here to talk about the honestly dysfunctional relationship between the YouTube creator and the machine learning of YouTube's copyright and TOS system, as there are plenty of YouTubers who have done enough talking about it to elaborate on it better than I could. What I am here to discuss is specifically the YouTube creators who, by sheer virtue of having been on the platform for as long as they have, can completely coast on by the people who they've, to put a word mildly, groomed into watching their content, regardless in the dip in quality or the sentiments they touch upon in them. Of course, this kind of attitude isn't exactly the best way to go about growing your platform beyond, and often it's hard to retain your audience when you do. But with YouTube, retaining your subscribers is extremely difficult, considering how neurotic the interests of your audience can be. The retention rate is typically measured by the number of subscribers you have divided by the average views you get for the videos you make. And despite 25% being a comparatively low percentage compared to any other metric, having a retention rate of that amount is quite high when it comes to YouTube standards. Of course, this is assuming that the views garnished are all from subscribers who also only watch the entire video once. So even then, the true retention rate could be even lower than the formula I'm using. Despite all of this, however, there are plenty of YouTubers who I've noticed that in spite of how their content has severely diminished in quality or consistency, will still maintain a pretty decent view count while their subscriber numbers constantly hemorrhage. I brought this up recently in my response to Jim Sterling's accessibility video that, for as awful as the arguments he was making in regards to it, how the video was largely devoid of the substance at hand, compared to how Eyebrow Cinema covered this subject, his like ratio and comments don't reflect that. Which leads me to believe that with having ingrained the audience you have by the nepotism of doing this for as long as you have, there is little incentive or reason to improve your content, or even to maintain consistency on the content you're currently making. It might be harsh to state this, like I did in said video, but a lot of the audience that still watch Jim aren't really chewing on what little substance there is of his videos, and simply play his videos like listening to white noise in the background, because there's still this nostalgic belief that the Jim Sterling of 2022 is still the same Jim Sterling they begun watching way back in 2011. Of course, there are other YouTubers whom, despite doing relatively the same thing for as long as they have, don't have this same disparagement of their content overall, and merely suffer the genuine burnout that people have when they choose to spend what time they have on any given content creator. Zero Punctuation is a series that has started almost for as long as YouTube was a thing, and most people don't find a similar distaste to Yahtzee Crosha as they do Jim because Yahtzee has stayed relatively consistent in the humor and the arguments he's made in regards to what he finds deplorable about certain game mechanics. Of course, the number of views he gets in comparison to subscribers is skewed heavily, both because he doesn't post this on his own channel, and that's provided by his subsidiary, The Escapist, whom for a good long while was just known as the Zero Punctuation channel, because that was all they would ever post. But I imagine that if he did, there wouldn't be much of a difference, but conversely, he wouldn't suffer the bleed out of subscribers that other creators complacent in their fields would. This subject has been something that has been consistently on my mind for as long as when I made the Borderlands 3 vid, both because I often reflect on the kind of content that I made, for as sporadic and chaotic my choices in creating said content are, but also how many YouTubers I once respected and adored have fallen off the wayside because they too allowed stagnation to dictate how they would form their careers. TJ Kirk of The Amazing Atheist, Ethan Klein of H3H3, Aaron Hansen of Game Grumps as notable examples. They've built a sturdy hammock off the backs of the audience they make and get too comfortable that often that hammock feels like quicksand they've lied in. It's interesting too how these people in respect have defied the very audience that got them where they were to begin with. As TJ Kirk has become a profound advocate for curbing the edgy underbelly he grew from, Ethan Klein has slipped into the extreme leftist bubble he used to mock, and Aaron Hansen became a busybody for the kinds of humor he was perfectly fine making money off when it wasn't politically incorrect to do so. A lot of the time, people will chalk this up to the fake it till you make it policy, as some others will say that creators will eventually change their minds on a lot of things, as 10 years on YouTube might as well be a lifetime in comparison. The problem with believing either philosophy is that if these people truly were faking it to make a buck, why is it that their respective careers are financially dipped as a result of doing so? And if it was just a natural change of perspective, why have these people completely inversed on said perspective rather than slowly drift to them? Because if you take a look at my extremely spotty list of videos, very little of my perspective has changed for as long as this channel has been made. Sure, I might have a change of heart about some social political issue, but hardly have I found myself dipping my toes on two extremes. Rarely do I look back and consider that I was wrong about this perspective, and that if there was any regrets I would have made is the choice of videos I decided to upload or their respective quality. Lately, I've been having to do much less of that as I've become more passionate about the videos as of current that I'm making, even if it may not amount to much as of current. But I don't want to get to a point where, by the mere benefit of the people who I've captured, that I can use them to pull my YouTube career forward on broken stilts and square wheels, but simultaneously, there's no way of knowing when that will happen unconsciously. It's not like when I had watched Jim Sterling regularly, there was a way for me to notice the veneer slipping away, as many of the videos that I take umbrage with in regards to him are also spotty in their history. Same goes for the other YouTubers in mention, as there will be only this sudden realization that the way they've handled their content to the audience has exceedingly suffered along with the enthusiasm behind it. Another video that had gotten me to bring this topic to the forefront is Shadiversity's video about how YouTube has unfairly treated him and many other content creators a bad hand. That YouTube has arbitrarily decided that certain videos of his deserve the attention compared to others that he would believe his audience want to see. While he does entertain the belief that perhaps part of the reason for this phenomenon is that his audience has been burned out of his content, never once does he consider that this is not something purely intentional by YouTube's own means. To prove this, look at the average views that I get on videos, and look at this shitpost that I made, and you'd find a huge discrepancy between. It does make me wonder why this got blown up so much while the rest are relatively decent in regards to how many subscribers I currently have, even if you can reason that it was a shitpost, was somewhat video game related, and was also controversial given my sentiments making it. But, for as much as it blew up, I didn't push this any more than I do any other video that I make beyond attempting to submit it to the TF2 Reddit, which got removed for NSFW content mere hours after I uploaded it. Is YouTube suggesting that this is the content that I should make, or is it that YouTube in their schizophrenic nature decided to blow this up compared to the rest? I'm not trying to act as though I don't sympathize with Shadiversity's frustrations, both that he does this to support his own real-life family and those who help make his content, but he can't sincerely believe that the people behind YouTube have any control over the monster they've made better than the creators who have had to tame the beast for as long as they have. Conversely, I find it hard to believe the idea that YouTube wants you to make only a certain kind of content. RT Game was a YouTuber that began making TF2 vids in the same vein as many other imitator, and then he moved on to do Twitch and other videos, and had a huge upsurge of views and subscribers that I don't believe he ever could have got if he continued making the same kind of content he originally started on. Adapt or die is a philosophy that many tried to adopt on YouTube, but with the aforementioned selective and neurotic nature of how YouTube thinks adapting your content means, that's a philosophy that's hard to follow. Which is chiefly why I believe a lot of content creators fall into the trap of doing what's comfortable and easy, than what would necessitate growing their audience. In turn, the audience can also fear changing content, as least as YouTubers like Star Underscore would have you believe, because they too have become too comfortable with the forecast that a change in the weather is like a betrayal of this parasocial trust you've made with them. And what benefit would making the change be if it simultaneously amounts to nothing and turns your own audience against you? And what point would changing your content be if you already have a captive audience ready to consume the all too predictable? Of course, I should clarify that change for its own sake isn't strictly beneficial to you or your bottom line, but not even bothering to test the waters for fear that it's too cold won't win you favors either. Even now, I get concerned that the content creators I bother lending an ear to will fall into the trap of comfortable familiarity, lest they rock this boat they've been coasting on, or at least find themselves betray their own convictions over time while insisting they're still the same as they've always been. But who am I to judge what a creator should make, right? I'm just one insignificant speck in a vast great ocean of content that people choose or watch, for better or worse. But You will find that in the perceived insignificance of detractors and critics were people who watched you and listened to you not because you gave them more of the same, but who paid attention to what you did say and what you did make, and noticed something had gone awry with your recent endeavors, that they were more significant than you'll ever know. Best to lend an ear to that sentiment rather than dismiss it and find yourself towing a line heading towards relative obscurity, just as those people who you scoffed at had predicted would happen. Don't become complacent.